Hello everyone. I have another journal I wanted to share with you today. This is a large size, 6.5 by 9.5 approximately, or 6 by 9. The details will, as far as size and stuff, will be either in the description below or in the Etsy listing. This is one of my fabric covered ones that I've showed before. The theme of this journal is tea in the garden. So it has a lot of tea related items and images, as well as flowers and things like that, of that nature, butterflies and such, birds. On the side is just a garment pin pinned to the spine here, and then clipped on here is a charm that has some green pearl beads, as well as a teacup and teapot charm with a little flower and another little green pearl dangling down here. It has a closure, which is just sari silk and lace that I stitched together, so they are fixed together. It is also sewn to the spine of the book, so it won't get lost. Along the edges here you can see that there are little charms and beads. Let's see if I can find them all. Here's another one. And another, and as we come across them in the book, I will show those to you in more detail. The interior of the cover has a pocket that goes all the way across. It's a large pocket that has this flower edge on the fabric. There's a lot of sewing in this book, so nearly every page and element has some sort of stitching on it. This is a book page, I'm trying to think, it was from a 1956 Mrs. Vanderbilt etiquette book. This particular page is about how to serve tea, and it has an illustration here of how to set your tea tray, which I thought was really neat. A lot of these pages are kind of neat reads. They're fun to see how things were done the proper way. It is backed with coffee dyed paper, and they're stitched together. This is the cover of sheet music. It says, "In an English tea garden." Excuse me. It is also backed with coffee dyed paper. This is a little grid paper. I don't know if you can see. And it has texture and the tea markings and everything. This is a journaling card that I made. I guess you could call it a journaling card. You can journal on the back of it. It was kind of just a fun little thing that I wanted to include that has a lot of elements to do with tea. I used some packaging from tea bags. Two different kinds. We have Mint Medley here and Earl Grey. This is a tab from a tea bag as well. This is not a tab from a tea bag, but I made it look like one. It's a stamped little card here that has been stitched all the way around. It is attached to these. Made these into pockets, and I made these little cards where I sketched on some lines to make it look like a little tea bag. And on the back, this one's I stamped "Good Morning" because it's with the Earl Grey. And the other one, oops, I'll turn it around so you can see that it's tea bag. This is just another tab from a tea bag that I saved. It's Mint Medley, so on this one I stamped "Good Night" because those teas are good to, I think, to have at those times of the day. This one's caffeine free. This is another one of the book pages from the etiquette book. Just goes in this pocket. This is an image from a card. There are tabs on the pages. There's lots of pockets as well. This is a cutout from a pack of pattern paper I just made into a little tag. This is a page from a coloring book that has also been tea dyed. Everything in this has been tea dyed. And it has flowers, irises and daffodils and things that you would, flowers you'd find in the spring. This is a vintage image of an advertisement for choice teas, coffee, and spices. It is printed on vellum and then stitched on. Here I did some stamping. This is a little bird, and it says "Sing." This is just a, I don't remember what that's called. It's like a label stamp. Here I've stitched pattern papers together. These are little rosettes that I stitched around and did an eyelet lace here as a fabric flip. This is a page from a Vintage Ideals. It wasn't as old as some of my others. This one was actually from the 80s. It's retro, we'll call it that. This is some lace, some lovely lace that I got from Renee. Tea-dyed paper. If I accidentally say coffee-dyed paper, because that's what I normally do, it is tea-dyed though, just so you know. This is a vintage image that I got from Graphics Fairy of some ladies in the garden having tea. Here is a little pocket that is a little tuck spot that I did some decoupage on. The napkin. The pocket here. This is a page from a small book about drying flowers and flower arrangements. And it has to do with certain flowers, what flowers are arranged well together. This is a fabric ruffle that I did, and this has the little tea bag charm on the side of it, or pinned to the side of it, I should say. It's a book page from a book about roses. There's a beautiful garden there. Excuse me, I still have a little bit of a cough. It's hanging on. A little pocket here with a page from another book that was flowers and their meanings, I believe, and uses and meanings. And this one is rose oil, medicinal use and properties, and how it is made, and a woman in the garden smelling her roses. This is a vintage envelope that I put into the middle of the book where it's stitched together, and then I closed it up to make an envelope. Another vintage image from Graphics Fairy of a girl carrying a tea tray up the stairs or down. I'm not sure which way she's going. She looks like she's just standing there. This is a kind of a mixed media page. I did some decoupage and some gesso and collage, and then inked it up and stitched around it. This is another page of the Roses book. I can't think. A little lace tab here with a bead charm. Hopefully I'm in frame. This is a vintage card that I got from a thrift store that I just stitched on to make a pocket. It says, "Sweet memories, special treasures, secret wishes, dreams come true." I thought that was fitting because when you're having tea with someone, you might share some of those things with your person you're having tea with. This is just a tea-dyed piece of writing paper, note paper. Got some lace stitched along the side. There's a teacup and some pattern paper stitched on here. I just made a flip out of that. This is a vintage image from Graphics Fairy as well. Stitched two book pages together from that etiquette book. This one has to do with table manners. On the back side, I gessoed it, and then I took a light wash of watercolor and put some color on there. You can use that as a journaling spot. And it is just clipped on here with this green round paper clip with a charm of some pearls and a little butterfly. Thought it looks kind of like a little ivy, or not an ivy, a vine growing on the page there. The other side of that coloring page, another journaling card, time for a cup of tea. A little bit of stamping and some stitching. Here is the back side of the music sheet, and I stitched a vintage image of a gazebo on vellum onto the page to add some interest to it. This is the center of the book. Over here I stamped a spoon that says "For You" on vellum and then stitched that on. In this pocket we have a tag. This has a vintage wallpaper on it, and inside here is inside this pocket is a little card that says "Dessert." I thought it would be cute to have, let me think, sorry, like what teas you feel go well with desserts, or maybe, what was I thinking? I just had a thought and then I lost it. Like a menu for dessert and tea, for things you would like to have with your tea. And there's journaling space on the back. This is a card, I believe, from Seven Gypsies. And some fabric tied to the top. Another page from the Rose book. This these are cutouts from a card. It's a little piece of a petite cake here and a cup of tea. I put those there mainly because the back side of the stitching from this little cluster of sari silk and the buttons just wasn't very pretty, so I wanted to cover that up. I thought that was a good image for that. As I said, this is a cluster and ruffle of some sari silk with some vintage, truly vintage buttons, and a garment pin with a little purple bead pinned on. This is an image from a Reader's Digest that has been stitched onto this page of Tea in the Garden. This page makes a large pocket with a piece of wallpaper. This is a page out of a gardening book, magazine actually. It has a poem on it called The Garden, and I stitched some more tea-dyed paper onto it to make a little journaling spot. This is a page from the Ideals magazine again. I love the little daisies here. Ruffle stitched pattern paper. Another ruffle of some ribbon and some patterned fabric. This is a corner of a vintage hanky that is embroidered, and I just folded it and pinned it on to look like a napkin, a cloth napkin. Some ledger paper. This is a felt butterfly that has been stitched on. I gave it some little antennas up there, and you can see its little flight pattern. Another one of those decoupaged pages with the gesso and the ink and music sheet, some vintage sheet music. Here's the center of the second signature, and I made another envelope where the stitches are, and then stamped this journaling card and sewed on another little rosette. The other side of that decoupaged page. Another stamp here of that spoon that says "For You." This is a cover from a greeting card that has a teacup with some flowers in it. I just made a little journaling card with another vintage image stitched to the front. It's a paper clip here with a little sunflower charm on it, and it holds on this journaling card with some yellow flowers. And this is another page from the etiquette book, and this one says "Social Graces." And I've done the same thing. I gessoed and then did a light wash of watercolor on the back for journaling. Another vintage image of a teapot and teacup, printed on vellum, and stitched on to make a pocket. This is another page from the book about flowers and their properties and uses. This one is chamomile, and it has a photograph on one side and an illustration on the other with a ladybug and dragonfly. I thought that was really pretty. The other side of that Ideals page, like I said, there's lots of sewing, and I left the tails long. If they bother you, you are free to trim them and do what you will with them. Lace tabs and lace along the side. It's a top pocket here, a little tuck spot, with another journaling card. It says "You Are My Cup of Tea," with a little piece of lace stitched to the back. Another piece of that little daisies page from the magazine that I just stitched to the edge there. Another side of the Roses magazine. In this back pocket here is a collaged journaling card that I made. I layered some tea-dyed paper, a watercolor paper that has a rose painted on it. It's just a little rosebud with leaves, and then I layered some wax paper over top of that and stitched it all together. And you can write on the back of that for a journaling spot. Here's another page from the etiquette book. This one has to do with informal placement of dessert silver for an informal lunch or tea. And this is the back pocket with just an extra page of the etiquette book, and this one is table manners. And there's the back side, and this is stitched around, but the edges are rough, so they will fray. They have already started to fray, and I like the rough edges of that, and that's why I make my journals the way I do. So I hope you enjoyed. Oops. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, let me know in the comments and give me a thumbs up. Thanks, guys.